Hello, everyone. The title of this episode is The World Lives Through Your Eyes. Attention is open and as open as the world that exists in front of it. Now, a type of, one can say, awareness is the attention that is to form but not the form. Every intelligent moment animates itself into many ways. It animates itself as a sort of biological resolve, but also as a sort of subtler mental existence. I consider your subtler mental existence to be the subjective realm. Now, pretty much we're starting off from a point that reality is here, as if existence is organized imagination, as if imagination, you don't have to imagine the real world. You are getting instant access to it. Yet the real world leads to imagination, and it leads to a domain of consideration where, in some sense, many forms are found in the same moment. So I'm saying that people on this planet, we are starting off thinking we're just singular personalities. We're just like, this is me, that sort of shape changing in front of itself. Which begs the question, what is aware of change and what is changing? Is a changing phenomena aware that it's changed? That it's changing? For me, there's a part of my awareness that is unreachable by my physical hands. There's a way that I am alive right now that is basking in the subtler designs of an abstract existence. So you see, I'm here right now, biologically, physically here in the objective realm, but my subjective realm has a different texture to it than how physical reality presents itself. The subjective realm is very instantaneous. What I mean by that is that the more closer you get into the more you step out of a sort of chronological sense of time and space, you come into a moment pre-thought, pre-definition. This moment is as valuable as the recognition that the world lives through your eyes. It is the eyes of mankind that is open to a world to be in. So one can say awareness is the most crucial element of existential preservation. It is what is rendering logic it is what is giving logic a podium, the prime, a sort of primordial awareness of your conscious existence. For me, in a science fiction novel I'm working on, in the future, people get educated by drinking. There are certain fluids, certain like the food, and in some sense, the nutritious value of the food has gone towards a subjective level, as if by drinking a glass of unique water, you have suddenly understood quantum physics. Imagine that sort of situation. For me, the mind moves and it moves at its own speed. And if you don't respect the pace of your mind, the momentum of your imagination will not be stable. You see, it's kind of like something you got to build the momentum for. For me, I had this a really big question was that am I creating the soul? Is the biological condition allowing a sort of solar consciousness to wonder about itself, or is it in some sense uh, the soul a sort of moment before it, regardless of what's in the moment. For me, I kind of looked at different human beings and what they thought on this planet, and then I eventually realized we're all in the same world looking at different pictures. And yet, the value of these pictures are their utility and the collective efficiency. You see, I want everyone who's listening to these Mr. Within talks feel like that fundamentally, just by existentially speaking, the purpose of life for the objective realm is to just be here. Do you understand? That means it took us billion years to evolve. Now we're these sophisticated creatures. We human beings seem to be standing in a room that many other creatures on this planet are not. As if what makes us superior to the animal is the awareness we have of how far we're not just an animal. A playful story of evolution I shared. It was something that just I was given a talk and suddenly the thought came and I just made a story out of it. It's this idea of these ape monkeys, these ape chimpanzees or whatever, and before their evolution, before like a wave of evolution comes. And so I wanted to kind of suggest to you society's mindset. So suddenly one of these eight chimpanzees says, guys, I feel something is coming. I feel something like a new wave of intelligence is arising in our species. And then all the mother monkeys are like, what are you talking about, evolution, man? We're monkeys. We jump from trees, throw stuff at each other, pick each other's back, that's like what? We're going to evolve by eating bananas? Ha! And the monkeys laugh at this. One monkey who has felt something different, has felt a new rhythm of the universe in expression and motion. And so suddenly in that moment, there's another person who says, guys, I feel it too. Something's coming. Suddenly in that moment, the unthinkable happens. The first ape that said something's coming was feeling the wave of a new renaissance of behavior occurring in the evolution of the wild, of expression added to the game of before. And so the moment this ape chimpanzee stands up, suddenly the other apes, the other chimpanzees look at it and are like, whoa. Suddenly the one who had faith as if his prayers have been answered, suddenly he stands up too. And once these two stand up, a third member stands up, then they all stand up. So you see, we as people have the responsibility of introducing new dimensions to our civilization, which the past could be blind to. And it is in some sense a war of vision. When I wonder about what is war? Let's see how intelligent our species is. What is war? Why are people fighting? And I understand, yeah, there's an economy to it, there's a scarcity of resources, but how does the war result? And fundamentally, it results from the use and the awareness of language. That means people's inner worlds are leading to such external consequences that they're leading to outer worlds. So for me, sometimes in order to save the planet, we have to kind of save the world within man. The world behind his eyes has to change for the better before the world outside can have any improvement. And the world outside is a realm of unknown probabilities. That means if you're sitting somewhere, you have a better sense of certainty of where you are and where you're, how life is, But when you suddenly are in motion, you find yourself as if just like how in Inception, the dude was just woke up in a coffee shop, Similarly, we have woken up into existence as evolutionary creatures. Our eyes have opened, and due to a sort of unique subjective separation, we have become creatures in the world rather than creatures that were the world. You see, we had to detach from nature like a young child, not a young child, but like a child looking at his parents and being like, I must go on journeys that in some sense my life commands. That moment when Christopher Columbus left with a group of people to kind of try to find his divine purpose of finding a new land, you're trying to find what was it, Eve's bosom on earth, some sort of unique place. It was very unique for me. It was a sort of notion that as if the sacrifice of exploration is the only entrance into the heavenly, into that which is beyond our knowing. And the world lives through our eyes. That means external phenomena seems to be an inner thing. And however, this inner thing, due to its leading, due to it opening its eyes and then considering an external, it has to deal with internally the previous moment of its non-existence. As if the moment you become existent, you can't, like, how can I tell you what, like the sophistication of our self-awareness is that it is aware that it will fade. We're like a candle who's realized it's melting. But a lot of other animals in nature, they're like candles that haven't realized yet they're melting. So they don't have the burden of the shift of the world in higher ways. We as our we're pretty much the creatures on this planet that could entertain a greater domain of responsibility than all the other creatures. As if our species suddenly is like so next level compared to all the other creatures. You know, we don't see lions building civilizations. We don't see dolphins making ocean cities, even though they're intelligent creatures and do have methods of communication. And sometimes when you look at nature, I remember I was watching like it was like an anthill, but at the same time, like there were flies above the anthill, and I was kind of seeing two kingdoms of insects. And as I was watching the two kingdoms, that means our intelligence is not something we can per se own. It is a quality of the universal sector. It is sort of a general wave being echoed, being in some sense transmitted from the center of existence, and we are the result of the receiver. As if before the sun's light could illuminate a manifestation, there was a world to illuminate. That means it's as if a time traveler goes to ancient times, even though he knows what will inevitably happen, one can say, he does not know what the circumstance of the moment is, because to study your moment means to not avoid the details of life's ups and downs in some sense, life's peaks and troughs. Because chaos and order stare at every being. It's not like, don't think it's just human beings that are afraid. Do you see? It's like rabbits are afraid too. Turtles too, you know. Our consciousness gives us the ability to transcend self-conceived limitation with the recognition that we put the image there. So I am telling you, Sally, that I'm talking. There's this very nice Zen story. A woman goes to the Buddha, and her child has died, but she can't accept it. A part of her world is inactive, a part of her moment's reality is inactive, and she can't accept it, and she's in this frenzy, and she's going on to many different people and like, please bring my child back, please bring my child back, but the child is evidently dead. So this woman with her dead child comes to Buddha and tells her, please, O enlightened one, O blessed one, O awakened one, please, like, bring her back. And so the Buddha sees, and all the disciples are looking. They're like, "Oh my God, what is Buddha going to say to this lady?" And Buddha tells this lady, "Okay, but you must go and get a mustard seed, and you must go get a mustard seed from a house that has had nobody die in it." And the lady, just in a frenzy, says, "Thank you, blessed one," and she runs. Allô. Ramin, وسط تاکم. مرسی. نه. وسط تاکم. Sorry for the interruption there. And so the lady runs. She runs to the town and knocks on the door and says, "Do you guys have a mustard seed?" And then the household's like, "Yeah, you know, we have a mustard seed." And then they say, "Has anybody not died in your family?" And suddenly the person says, "No, we have lost a family member. We have had death in our family." And as this woman runs from house to house, from house to house in search of a mustard seed of a household that has not experienced death, she begins to come to terms with the inevitable truth of nature, that it brings manifestation forth, and once the conditions are no longer preservable, it in some sense decomposes and experiences another level of phenomena. So for me, you are an attention to a phenomenon. This lady runs back to the Buddha and suddenly sees Buddha and sees her child and says, "Help me bear you." Because she has understood that life is one of those things that our ideas are not the center of the universe. I feel what Copernicus and Galileo were trying to inspire in the mind of man was a recognition that the world doesn't just revolve around us, which in some sense means the world you see is not just the world you see. So treat it as a phenomena of a passing world, of a changing universe. And when you treat stuff as a phenomena of a changing world, it doesn't mean you don't care for it. It doesn't mean you say, "Yo, man, I'm spiritual, I'm good." I don't need to, worry about, matter. It's not a escape because of a denial of confrontation. It is a sort of ability to not see truth outside of yourself. The moment is the moment. Me speaking to you right now, I am not just this body. I'm not just the name tag. I'm not just my thoughts. I'm not just my emotions. I am the whole moment. I am the roar of existences now. The beautiful thing about this life is that it's going to make your eyebrows move in, different ways. But fundamentally, you gain a responsibility in recognizing your mind's involvement in the generation of the ideology accepted as valid in the moment. Once you become responsible for your mind becomes a tool of your moment rather than a definition of your moment. You function as a presence on this existence, not a shaped personality. You don't walk in this world as if any sort of negative confrontation comes to you, in some sense you are in some sense you recognize the untouchable vision within. You realize nobody can see through your eyes, so nobody knows better than you. But at the same time, you could not know better than you. You see? And so we learn from studying first external teachers, but then the task of the true external teachers to be a mirror. There's no enlightenment to give like free candy to people. I don't know what the hell's going on in the New Age community, but I'm telling you, it's not. It's important to have devotion in the purpose of your attention, but it is not to fall prey to an unquestioned system is the death of creativity. So creativity fundamentally is the urge of a free expression. It's the energy behind free expression. This is why you see people there's some level of there's people on this planet who, if you ask them, are you creative, they would probably say no. But when injustice occurs, their mind has creatively considered a response. So in your own behaviors throughout the day, you are seeing the expression of your mind. You're seeing your mind in motion. As I speak right now, I am seeing my mind in motion. But I am seeing my mind in motion in regards to a subjective significance, but also an objective significance. When I open my eyes, physical reality speaks first. When I close my eyes, non-physical reality, subjective reality speaks first. The non-physical is so profound that it could have shape, but no substance. As if scientists looked at this empty universe in some sense, the space that is containing all of it, and was like, we're all in a room. We're all floating in empty space. As if the plastic duck in the bathtub suddenly has attained consciousness, and it's like, yo, where am I? What is this? So we similarly have awoken to the world with a curiosity that demands to know the essence behind the change of the world. It's instinctual, it's subconscious. You might think right now you're a really good person, but subconsciously you might have very dormant, chaotic tendencies. And for me, the human being, the best way I've learned to function is not to define yourself. And what I mean by that is that you're not your effect. You are an unspeakable cause of your presence. Your presence is the canvas where all pictures and all notions of knowledge are drawn in. So for me, I've noticed something that in some sense I think puts an end to any sort of debate between the branches of knowledge. Simply that as children, before we even call ourselves children, we are a moment. I personally have memories before I learned language. And it was just sensory beingness. And in that sensory beingness, due to the engagement of the external world with the child begins to shape a sort of individualism. This is why they say illusion is the notion of the balance of power and wisdom. As if the alpha wolf is constantly being challenged by beta wolves because the beta wolves all feel they're the alpha wolves of their universe, of their reality. So what I mean by that is that there is a saying that says your expression of masculinity and masculine, let's say it's a mode of behavior. This mode, your masculinity is based on the wars you win, which means that the small, how you in some sense assimilate efficiently the experiences that occur to you in your subjective framework and universal axis of thought. I'm telling you what just defines your creativity is the ability of the world you're in. You know, you can ascribe talent to the artist, but you can also ascribe talent to the world that that artist is seeing, where there are permissions for that sort of performance. So pretty much, I think the most exciting thing to do on this planet is a concept I call the great work. And your great work, it's not some, like later on somebody told me it's like some esoteric alchemical thing, but I'm not using it in that way. I'm saying your great work is your the expression of your greatest self-awareness. And your self-awareness cannot be your true nature cannot be studied until you're honest. And I'm sorry to say, that's it. Until you drop every idea you think you are, and just stand in the satisfaction of a presence of a moment. Then your mind gets a permission. So for me, I find that my intelligence, usually you look at the person's intelligence, I think most people see that intelligence is something you're accumulating. You're accumulating, in some sense, more data, more data, more data, more data. But for me, I don't. My intelligence it does not perceive the world that way. My intelligence perceives that we are already in a world of data, as if I was to create 1,000 inventions, 10,000 inventions, I would not be worried of writer's block or anything because, in my view, the data is there. Our intelligence just sculpts itself in the moment. It's just you sculpt knowledge out due to the honest engagement of the living vision within your sight. That means my sensory perception, they all bow down, Game of the Thrones style. They have sworn their allegiance to my consciousness, to my attention. And my attention is, in a very cool way, how I could say it, it's like my invention. I find our true nature will come across as if like you've put a puppet on your hand and you're moving your hand in a wave-like pattern, but you think the puppet is the one moving. And I'm saying when you study your true nature, you begin to see how your subconscious is a world of its own that is keeping and influencing your world. Your subconscious is like, let's say it like this. Your unconscious is your father, your subconscious is your mother, and your conscious is you. And I'm saying, using these words not in a personal way, I'm using these words in a sort of metaphorical existential way. And so you see, the son, the child, is constantly being informed by how the unconscious and subconscious communicate to it. So those people who kind of see the spirit of the moment as a sort of, Gaia as a goddess, I'm not opposed to that view, but I'm saying that is your subconscious. That is a subtler acceptance of a phenomena occurring behind your eyes. Yet the moment changes in such profound ways that what was God became man that was created by God. There was a time I remember I was sitting on a park bench and I just started giggling and laughing because I wondered, oh my God, could there be a chance that it's not my name or my personality looking out through my eyes? Could it be just the intelligence of this universal cycle? Could it just be the intelligence of nature's design? That means is my real name nature? That's what I kind of thought. And I started laughing because I realized that's one can have fun with the illusion before penetrating the doubt, before breaking the primary duality that is creating suffering for you. Seldom this is said, but the same way you get rid of suffering is the same thing that occurs. The same way you get rid of suffering, depression, and inferior states of mind. The way you get rid of them is the same way that the mystical enlightenment tradition was. It was a revelation of a conscious transformation, as if the caterpillar did not blindly enter the cocoon. There was a consciousness there, and that consciousness died to itself and resurrected. For me, a phoenix and a caterpillar have a lot to talk about, or a phoenix and a butterfly. Regardless the size of your wing, the world occurs as a vast now. And so comes the joy of the conscious unknown. Because for me, I've asked many people who I consider in this lifetime, they have lived better than me, externally, and they're wise and humble and good, decent human beings, not only in my family, but in just greater parts of the world and just even in videos you can see. And so for me, it was that moment where I was like, the reason I felt I was kept in an inferior state of mind was because the superior was positioned so outside of where I am now, so far from where I am now, was my perfection place that I did not even attempt perfection. And when I say perfection, I mean the ultimate effort. Because we all have a fight in us. That's the way. Don't think the wars end just because there's no longer swords or guns. The wars of the mind are endless. Yet these wars are there to kind of give an activity to the conscious individual. That means we need to preserve our egos. The reason is we gotta protect the illusion that is a sort of shield for the truth. That is a sort of the staircase to heaven, believe it or not, could be as elusive as hell. Back in the day, human beings were not only in agreement with just like, okay, I like the laws of the town, of the village. It wasn't just neighborhood consciousness. It was a consciousness of existential purpose. This is what many people don't understand about religion and why it was so powerful. For me, religion is like, damn, there was a book that came into position as if a sort of linguistic architecture came into place. For me, language is like buildings. And this text, this scripture, outlasted many centuries. As if why was there a need to keep a story going on in our species. And I realized because there's a value in that story. Before, when I was younger, I would see what I would consider as evil behavior in society, malicious, malevolent behavior in society, and I would get sad and kind of like be like, why? But I later on I kind of evolved and went into a sort of metamorphosis of a conceptual view that, in some sense, I realize evil exists because it is allowed to. As if just because you don't like somebody doesn't mean their rights should not be important for you. Their freedom should not be important for you. What that means is, imagine your greatest enemy or somebody you have a conflict with. Imagine that person you're in front of you, and you and that person are about to go into a conflict, into a confrontation, but you suddenly see someone more evil, more of an enemy than both of you, begins and starts hurting your enemy. As if a true enemy never avoids fairness, because skill levels are their egos are both standing in great stature. I'm saying, and so that evil, in some sense, means that do not let the mind is so powerful that you can be asleep and still it will simulate a dream world you're in. Your body's not moving, but you're living in a world, you're moving in your dreams, you know? So I'm telling you, this mind is so advanced that if in a dream state, if the senses aren't there, it can simulate a world where we move in, where I've moved in some of my dreams. Like consciously, I want to go left, I went left. Like I literally tested it in my dream if I could move. And so I recognize that as if we are simply objective reality is not as the outer reality is not as important as the inner reality, because fundamentally we're in our dream state. If you were someone, like, imagine a scientist exploring the conditions of a dream state in the dream. So that scientist would be like, holy shit, there's a world here even though the senses are inactive in some sense. So the mind is living in an abstract simulated realm. So right now, as I'm speaking, my name, my personality, who you think I am, is in an abstract simulated realm. This abstract simulated realm is something so strange that it's as if there is a world over our world which is giving meaning to our world. There is a, believe it or not, a sort of hidden multidimensionality of a sort of subjective existence being simultaneous with an objective existence, yet both being found in the witness of the moment, which is an attributeless kind of world devourer. You know, that's kind of change. Nowadays Western society unfortunately has become so focused on political correctness that they're not realizing how much that political correctness is destroying creative opportunity for free ways of communication to flow. For me, the most important thing, like if I was to create one law that every human being should abide by, is that let children speak. Let other angles of existence to share. Because a network will outlive all the individual contributors. That is the power of it. For me, I look at certain societies, and I remember I was listening to this lecture, Noam Chomsky. Somebody had kind of taken what Jordan Peterson was saying about Marxism, and in some sense what Noam Chomsky was saying about Marxism. And it's a very interesting video. I might share the link in the comment section. But the notions of a sort of patriarchal oppression was taken into question, as if even though the religious inquisition was dismantled, yet there is another sort of governance of what freedom is. That means, just like how they say the one with the biggest stick in the room gets to decide first, similarly, it's that the one who has who is defining freedom is suggesting your inspiration's limit. So for me, I'm in a strange state of mind because in this state of mind, there isn't there isn't a kind of worshiping of my memories. There isn't a sort of I don't I am preferenceless. It's not that I don't care. I'm going to say it like this: I'm preferenceless to the moment because a part of me does not have a personality and is being the moment. It's just present as the moment. That presence is, in some sense, so aligned with true intelligence compared to the personality that is just lost in the world of how you designed it, how you thought of yourself as a moment. You know, some believe it or not, in social circles, some people actually consider me obnoxious, bold and kind of foolish and obnoxious. Because for me, I don't have. I realize because of mortality and just we're temporary. There is no point holding back. There's no point holding back. I could come and sit here and give you such a polite, organized, structured kind of, good human being kind of talk. But for me, I realize that my order is as free as its chaos, as its codependent chaos is. So when I, in some sense, do something bad, I don't try to suddenly be a good guy. I just watch. I watch why my moment has entered this sort of generation of manifestation and meaning. And then instantly I remind myself that my presence is attributeless. My personality lives in accordance to attributes which are, in some sense, in their furthest advancement, are how people are believing in the laws of the universe, laws of nature. I was listening to Manly P. Hall, who, believe it or not, I remember coming across his videos years ago, but I just felt like an intuitive restriction not to watch his videos. But eventually I opened up to his videos and I was very fascinated by what he was saying, as if he was a sort of truth of the moment being expressed rather than a person speaking. So Manly P. Hall was talking about destiny, and he said that eventually this bewildered beat, like I'm not saying his words per se, but he's saying eventually, like if I paraphrase or summarize in my own way, what he's saying is that we have come to a point in our evolution that we are beginning to recognize destiny as a pattern. And it is a pattern not just limited to the conditions of our view. It is an unconditional pattern, as if it is a vast occurrence, as if like a group of people are walking and you suddenly find yourself in the middle, as if there's something going on. There's a program before you program anything into your belief. There's a world occurring before your eyes open to it. And so, as you enter this world, for me, it doesn't matter if you're a newborn child, like who doesn't know language, listening to my talks. If it doesn't matter for me who, if you're somebody on the brink, on your deathbed, hearing this talk. It doesn't matter for me if you are somebody who feels this just visiting this dimension like a multidimensional tourist. For it doesn't. For me, what matters is that self-awareness comprehends a sort of responsibility to the nature of its universal sector. You gotta live for the world, and then the world lives eternally. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much the best game humanity can play. This is the secret, guys. This is a sentence where I personally, when I wrote it, I felt I had designed something of great architecture, symmetrical architecture, but very profound. So I feel like I've kind of written one of the most profound sentences in existence. And this is the sentence: live for life, and you will live for life. The whole point of metaphysics is to comprehend what the physical inquiry cannot capture. And what the physical inquiry cannot capture is the production of an identity to even accept stability. As if our intelligence can be so elusive that all our external evidence everything that is factual to science can be seen as void, as the origin of consciousness. You see, if you think you're a material being, guess what? You don't have free will. You don't have free will. You're just concluding everything is just pre-designed. Yet, if you don't conclude materiality or even non-materiality is truth, if you just stand in the moment, you don't have to be a belief. You don't have to have a belief. You don't have to be locked in a certain mode of vision. The world lives through your eyes, and based on how you are alive, you appreciate this. There have been days where I've woken up and it's been a beautiful sunny day, but internally, this occurred like years ago, where internally I felt the world was dead. I felt it was dead. Because recognize that in the moments of its cluttered wars and confusion was the moments where it had to be efficient. For me, I feel it's like I'm just singing my own song, believe it or not, in an empty universe. The world is empty to me. You may be hearing this talk, but I have no idea how your mind functions. The moment you hear my words, they are no longer my words. They are, in some sense, how you perceive them. To recognize that the ultimate goal and reward for self is not heaven. It is the ultimate reward for the origin of that self. And that origin of self, in some sense, seems to be a moment where both value as if your mind is being the world and at the same time is being you. But because you just think you're you due to a sort of linguistic attention capture, like I don't know how to tell you this, but sometimes you fail when you believe the concept of failure. Once you accept a mode of inefficient existence, you're bound to be exposed to it. This is why ethics and morality has two ways it can present itself. Fundamentally, it can be based on a blueprint of behavior, which I feel is a kind of Stone Age way of going about it. I feel that the thing is that the value of each moment is based on the various communicatable angles of its intelligence. That means if, for example, guys, like we all saw like a strange, alien appear and just sit and meditate and not move, we as human beings, we're not going to point guns at it at first. And if we do, we're foolish. What we would do is that we would study the behavior of this creature. And we would see that this creature is being still at first, as if it is like a chess game and we have to make the first move. And if we sit still and silent, then perhaps the alien understands that we have been able to align or communicate to it with not a sort of violent interest. For me, let me tell you, there's an alien called language, and it is, in some sense, controlling many people's minds. This alien is, in some sense, an unknown initiative. There are some truths that you can speak about, but there are some truths that were here before your voice even could speak. Trust me, for me, I am too humbled by the unknown to just say things have to be in a certain way. My relationship has become a relationship with the core intelligence generation of my system of design. For me, I look at life as a design. That means that when I see you at first, trust me, I'm not thinking who you are at first. I'm just seeing your design as a being. I am seeing also the design of your movement. That means it's not that the eyes are the window of the soul. Any movement of that creature is a window to their soul. Is a way of them being a sort of ambassador of their own experience. So for me, I consider honestly like violence to be, I guess, an activity, but at the same time, an unnecessary thing because we have minds capable like no other species on this earth. I can't emphasize this. And what we're doing is just trying to fit into a social system that has defined the values of success and failure beforehand. Imagine if you fail a race, somebody comes and says, "Oh man, you failed." You'll be like, "How do I know I failed? How do you know I have decided the end of the failure?" You see, thoughts can move. Thoughts can be directed through speech. It's worth wondering about your attention's design and the designs in your attention. And I will tell you, I will honestly tell you, when you live honestly for more than a year, you're going to suddenly see various aspects of your intelligence open because your inner space has calmed down. Sometimes that person who's gone to like you, I saw it in these YouTube videos of Papa G. And so this dude from like, I don't know, from somewhere from Germany or somewhere has gone to Papa G and is asking constant questions. And Papa G is giving him an answer, giving him an extremely simple answer. Papa G's answer is like, just be silent. Like Papa G, this guru, this like, very like kind of, it may come across to some people as slightly primitive, but this very simple living man, Papa G, this enlightened guru, I believe, I have great respect for him. He just it's like he's telling the minds of people to shut up, but he's doing it in a way where he's saying it, you are in control of the state of your intelligence, of the intensity of your expression. You become a true artist when you are no longer a caged lion. You break the cages of self-contempt, of self-denial. Do you know how you can, just like how you can accept something, you can deny something? Because that is in some sense the performance of the domain of free will. It is the decisions that we make that define how our world will live on. An idea which right now, I just got a new outlook on it is that I speak about a new renaissance occurring. And I speak about how this renaissance is going to be very different than before because it's going to be a multidimensional renaissance to a consciousness that is no longer attributing it with the garb of attributing to itself the garb of history. It is not clothing itself in historical value. It is clothing itself in momentary novelty. In some sense, a way where you're like, I do not have an opinion because the world is happening. It's so happening right now, that in some sense, who can um, uh, define the shape of light? The speed of light is not faster than the speed of the attention that creates a world to even consider that speed of light. We must be playful, yet honorable and efficient. We must not get obsessed by personality. We must not get trapped in a sort of thinking that we only have to save ourselves because the world's dying anyway mentality. I'm telling you, dear listener, something that has really helped me was looking in the mirror. That's where honesty begins. When you begin to see that before you can confront the external enemies, you have to confront the concept of having enemies. And you have to confront the chaos and the order, not having an allegiance to one side, but being like that kind of like elder elder like that elder yogi. And okay, that's not a good term. Let me say it like this. Once you understand your free will is here, once you truly understand that right now as I'm speaking, before you have any sort of response, there is a free will in a moment. This free will is moving itself just like how a bird has two wings, with again subjective value and objective value. Yet the value originates with the whole bird being in motion. Start writing. I'm telling you, those people who write, they begin comprehending the awe-inspiring, unknown, hidden rhythms of the earth, hidden rhythms of the moment. Before I thought I was a poet, I realized my moment was poetry. It's just poetry in motion. I, Live for your world. It's the privilege of a lifetime, which includes the world that is providing and being a pillar of meaning. There's this profound, I believe, I don't know exactly which culture, but it could be Indian or it could be Islamic, I don't know. But it's one of these quotes where it says, when the child is born, the child cries, but the world smiles and laughs with grace, gracefully. But when the child dies, the world cries. And that being, that child smiles and laughs gracefully. We fear our death our whole life, not realizing that ideas are our own colors of the moment. We must dare to explore our direct experience. You find something to live for when you acknowledge a world with enough value to continue. Externally, we must be playing the greatest game of of universal responsibility. We must care for the designs of the world and for the technologies of the world. And we must treat nature not like, oh man, we're hurting Mother Earth, holy shit, like stop. You know, it should be a mentality that says this Earth is a database. I remember I was walking, this was like around 2013, and suddenly I stopped. I was just walking in the sidewalk, you know, and I stopped and a tear came down my eye because I thought, oh my God, what if in the future we're all so reckless that the children of the future never get to see nature, never get to see trees, never to forget the color green? We must live for the color green, I'm telling you. We must live for the natural world because it is as if it is an ancient friend sharing us wisdom. Technology is a sabotage of natural success because inevitably it will change the condition. It will make the rules of nature, the destiny of the planet based on the thoughts, the inner, the subjective reality. So when I think that mankind made like nuclear bombs, that was a moment where the thoughts of man had evolved beyond the thoughts of nature. As if man could do something that could destroy, eradicate intelligently things that were naturally sprouted on the surface of this planet. For me, killing animals is like, it's a sort of ridiculous paradox. It is a paradox because it makes you avoid, like, how can I tell you, an animal is not an animal. An animal is is a part of the universe. It's a part of the universal body of intelligence in this sector. You don't understand the value. Matter is a station. You know, people feel that their physical bodies, let me tell you something hyper spiritual, you know? And I guess it's later on I realized Shinto, the tradition of Shinto, kind of acknowledged this. There was a moment where I thought that this body was a vessel. I thought it was a vessel. What I mean by that was that as if it's just this bus stop for different conscious momentums of attention to gaze through. I felt like my sight was the eyes of every, how can I tell you, as if like, just like we're made of a collection of cells, think as if the person thinks he's made of a collection of souls. And then begins to kind of realize the dynamic of a drop falling from the sky and being separate and individual and going towards an inevitable unknown, suddenly hitting the collective unity of a horizontal dimension. A part of your sight is eternal. And this could be too much of a bold statement to tell you just up front, but I'm telling you, this is why fear dies before you die. You watch as the person watches their end, they also watch the end of any program they had in circulation of their momentary awareness. That means this is why even though I give these talks, and for me it's like a sort of creative effort, playful creative effort, but it's the world moves in such incredible ways that the moment you choose to be a student, it will show you how you are the teacher. And the moment you're the teacher, it will show you how you're the student, because it is commanding you to move beyond the domain of limitation that you were never meant to be in. There's two ways of getting rid of problems. Either you have to have an objective confrontation, or you have to have a personal subjective confrontation in you having a new way to see the problem. Because the stubbornness of men and the greed of people is not just in movies about Wall Street. It was also in war, where the egos of the warriors in the battlefield had to prove. They had to kill once provoked. They had to accomplish their expectation, or they would not be proud of their moment. I'm telling you, the psychology of battle is incredible. You don't know how much war evolved the minds of men. Just like how religion and any other mass movement of behavior or programs of behavior have initiated the consciousness. So, thanks for listening. If there are any questions, now's a good time to share. But also, that, guys, I think this is the primary truth to acknowledge, and first to figure out by yourself. Because as Galileo says, you cannot teach anyone anything, you can just make them realize it within themselves, thus rendering every external teacher a mirror of how your mind generates value. What I'm trying to say is that the primary view to acknowledge and to kind of see how you feel about it is the view that if you are putting energy to live for yourself, the outcome of that will be a bubble bursting. But if you put an effort to live for the living world, you live for life, for actual life, you care for it, you become responsible for the freedom of every mind on this planet. And you begin to understand that freedom will include various forms of action, but these actions, regardless of their chaotic outcomes, will also have, in some sense, very vast ordered backup systems. We can create a new civilization from the dirt, if only the past does not limit the future's vision, the future's creativity. If the world lives through your eyes are the world. So stare magnificently at your moment. Hold your moment of being in the most, in the peak divine honor. Just like how the samurai had a sort of moral code that made it mandatory for them to behave in a certain way to have their inner realities in balance. When you can be free without, before you need to be, you are there. As Zen Master Dogen says, the Buddha's path, the awakened path, is to study yourself. And to study yourself means to forget yourself. And to forget yourself means to awaken to the nature of all things. In other words, you look at what the thought that you think you are, you forget that you're that thought, and you begin to realize the unknown aspects of your intelligence. And that's where your style comes from. It comes from an unknown emergence of energetic expression deep within the presence of your moment. I'm going to say one more thing, which is a sort of focus on. Here, actually, let me look up the exact thing so I'll tell you the exact. So there's this guy named, here, let me say it like this. There's this man named Inayat Rahmat Khan Pathan, but people know him as Hazrat Inayat Khan. And he's come up with this thing. This man passed away in 1927. Um, in some sense, these are the 10 principles that this man formed for a sort of approach to Sufism, which was, he called it universal Sufism. And just, I want you to just conceptually see what this man is saying. This guy in history, Hazrat Inayat Khan. So this is on Wikipedia, I'm reading it, but I think it'll still get the point across. Anyways, he says, Inayat Khan set forth 10 principles that formed the foundational principles of his universal Sufism. Principle 1, there is one God, the eternal, the only being. None exists save He. 2, there is one master, the guiding spirit of all souls that constantly leads all followers towards the light. 3, man, this guy's principles are like 10 is going to probably blow your mind. So 3, there is one holy book, the sacred manuscript of nature, the only scripture that can enlighten the reader. 4, there is one religion, unserving progress in the right direction toward the ideal which fulfills every soul's life purpose. 5, there is one law, the law of reciprocity, which can be observed by a selfless conscience, together with a sense of awakened justice. There is one brotherhood, the human brotherhood, which unites the children of earth. This is number 6. The human brotherhood, which unites the children of earth indiscriminately in the fatherhood of God. This was later adapted by the followers to, there is one family, the human family, which unites the children of earth indiscriminately in the parenthood of God. Anyways, principle 7 of this universal Sufism. He says there's one moral, the love which springs forth from self-denial and blooms in deeds of beneficence. And then in brackets it says later alternative, which springs forth from a willing heart surrendered in service to God and humanity, and which blooms in deeds of beneficence. Principle 8, he says there is one object of praise, the beauty which uplifts the heart of its worshipper through all aspects from the seen to the unseen. 9, there is one truth, true knowledge of our being, within and without, which is the essence of wisdom. There is one path, annihilation of the false ego in the real. And then in brackets it says later alternative, the effacement of the limited self in the unlimited, which raises the mortal to immortality in which resides all perfection. Inayat Khan's emphasis on spiritual liberty led many contemporary Westerners to think that his brand of Sufism is not inherently intertwined with Islam, although his followers continue to perform zikr. Okay, so, so guys, I think this was interesting because you can begin to see how at least one human being has looked at the world, and he's approached the sort of universal commonality and abidance with a sort of ultimate law, with an all like our intelligence at its most heightened state is a law of our world. You can say. Cultivate efficient self-awareness in every moment. Study how your awareness is being the self in every moment, and then comprehend the true presence of your nature. As Sri Ramana Maharshi says, meditation is your true nature. And your true nature, in some sense, meditation stops, as Swami Krishnananda says, when you have acknowledged the inseparability of the individual activity with the cosmic activity. Your moment is a once in a lifetime design, which one travels through design, travels through experiences. The true nature of the experiencer, as concluded so far, is it's not a container. Your memory is not like all being thrown in a bag where you can just put your hand in and grab your memory. Even though it comes across that way, but it has to do with a sort of imprint. It has to do with how like data is like sculpting the inner self as time moves forward, the notions of the inner self. As if the soul is steering a vehicle where one hand is on the idea of itself, the other hand is its objective body moving. Yet it is the observance and the reverence of the beyond. Because the unknown is a liberator of knowledge. The dude who said, I don't know, freed the world. Much blessings and namaste.